The tape still exists, though no one plays it anymore. It sits in a brittle envelope, its label fading to a soft bruise of ink that once spelled out a name and a date. Vega, Marisol, 10-14-1989. The room where the evidence sleeps is cold even in summer, a square of air that smells like dust, dried glue, and a memory of rain brought in on old shoes. Fluorescent light ticks awake, showing shelves in receding ranks, brown boxes with a bureaucrat's patience, and one shelf where the Vega case has waited like a held breath. The crime scene itself never leaves. It was a motel just outside Ely, along the road that runs toward the copper pit and the low, stubborn mountains. Room 17, a receding green carpet, a bedspread with an industrial floral that made no promises, a small bathroom where the mirror had a foxed edge silvering peeling away like a slow confession. The air had smelled of cheap soap, and the heat burned in the plumbing. Time prefers places like this. Time can lie down and pretend to be dead. Marisol Vega was 23. Her file says that first, but the rest is harder to hold in the head. Daughter of Rafael and Elena Vega, arrivals from Las Cruces 5 years earlier. Born with a calm face, the kind that makes people tell stories to it. She worked evenings at the Bonanza Lounge 2 towns over, pouring beer into chilled glasses, smiling in a way that implied gravity. Before that, a semester of geology at Great Basin College. She could map the lineaments of a hillside and name minerals in the thrift store bracelets the other servers wore. She wanted something unglamorous, a small place with a yard, a dog, some money in a coffee tin, a life you could account for on a lined sheet. The unglamorous things are the easiest to take away. She didn't show up for work on October 13, 1989. A friend found her car the next morning, a rust-flecked Corolla sleeping under motel signage. They opened room 17 and the silence walked out first. The body was in the tub, head resting against tile, wrists marked by a single band of bruising like a bracelet, not drowned, not stabbed, not shot. The medical examiner called it manual asphyxia. In the file, the term looks like an apology. A detective named Elias Hart was 28 then, knew enough to the job to dream about the cases he carried home in his chest. He had a gift for noticing the wrong details. Over time, he would call it a method. In 1989, he walked the room carefully, eyes drawn to a cigarette stub mashed into the carpet, to a thin film of soap on the bath lip, to a rag-folded towel where a neat ghost of a hand had pressed. He stood by the window and watched the road. Trucks moved in the middle distance like beetles. He told himself the case would open if he stayed very still and waited for it to open. But the town shrugged its small shoulders. Names were spoken, then unsaid. Alibis stacked like playing cards. The photo of Marisol in the file is a strip mall portrait, dark hair, a face you could talk to, the quiet of someone who didn't know she was being photographed, or always did. The case stayed open as a formality. It lived in the numbers, in the ledger, in the annuals. It lived in Hart's head like a weak radio signal. He moved on to other assignments, then out of homicide, then back, always with the feeling that room 17 was a place he had left a door ajar. Years accumulate. The motel changed owners and then paint. The room acquired new curtains, then lost them again. The carpet darkened to the green of an old bruise. People drove past without seeing a story. Only the file kept the old air, the brittle edges. It waited, as patient as paper. The first 100 words of any story are a test of faith. This one keeps its test quietly. A woman goes missing, a room stares back, a young detective holds his breath. Nothing moves. That is the suspense, an immobility so dense it becomes sound. It is the hum of a fluorescent tube. It is the throat clearing of a clerk down the hall. It is the way an envelope scuffs against another envelope when someone's hand, not quite steady, puts it back. 2. Case reopens due to discovery of new crucial evidence. The reopening does not arrive with trumpets. It arrives with a misfiled tape. An intern, Ernest, careful, allergic to ceremony, comes across a cassette in a box that should contain only photographs. The box is mislabeled Media 1990. The handwriting is the same bruised ink as before. The intern brings it to the property window. A sergeant checks the Vega manifest, finds audio, room 17 answering machine not logged. There is a pause in the ledger, a quiet square of white where something was supposed to be. Someone initials it, then calls Hart because the alleyways of fate are often paved with bureaucracy. "What did we miss?" the sergeant says. "It is not accusation, not yet." Hart is older now. His hair has gone gray in a way that looks intentional. His voice has lost its vanity. He signs for the tape, then holds it as if it could evaporate. He finds a player. There is still one in the lab, a survivor, and clicks the plastic clamshell open. The tape ticks forward in small mechanic gulps. Then the room fills with the particular hiss of old magnetic media. Hart feels time lay its hand on his shoulder. It is the motel's answering machine, retrieved by the first officers, photocopied receipt in the file, but allegedly blank. The new discovery is that it was. A technician, 36 years too late, misaligned the azimuth slightly and hears a voice where there was supposed to be silence. The hiss resolves into speech the way fog resolves into hillside. "Marisol, it's me." The voice is male, somewhere in his 20s, vowel soft, trying to be quiet. "Listen, don't, I'm close, I have the rest, please don't leave." There is a pause as if the caller is listening to his own heart. A car passes in the background. Coins clink payphone. "He knows," the voice adds, almost whispering. "He knows about the locker." The tape ends abruptly. The machine clicked off or a hand cut the line. The technician rewinds, plays it again. Hart listens 3 times, then a 4th. "Locker," he repeats, and the word is a key trying to recognize a door. They find the motel's old handbook in archives, a photocopied stapled thing with typewriter fonts and a clip-art palm tree on the cover. In 1989, a short-term safe deposit service was offered behind the desk, a tin box with numbered slots for travelers' checks and jewelry. The handbook notes, "Larger items may be stored in gym locker at the bus depot by arrangement with manager. Coin needed for lock return." The bus depot is gone. A convenience store stands there now, selling lottery tickets and dry sandwiches. But public lockers have long memories. Records from the depot are boxed in the county storage facility, not digitized, full of mold-sweet paper smell. In those ledgers, a line, almost nothing. Locker 12B, rented October 11, 1989, paid through October 15. Signature illegible. A deposit number cross-referenced with a cashier at the Bonanza Lounge. The cashier is dead now. The lounge is a dental office, but the ledger says what it says. Someone connected to Marisol stored something as the week ticked slowly toward the night of her death. "Close," Hart murmurs, remembering the voice. "I have the rest. Money, evidence." The phrase feels like the underside of a plan. Cold cases reopen on the strength of a single sound sometimes. The department calls it development. The press calls it breakthrough. Hart calls it reason to walk back in. He returns to room 17 as it is now, which is not room 17 but an address wearing new paint. The current manager, bored and compliant, unlocks the door. The room introduces itself patiently. A scrape in the baseboard, a window that sticks, a faint bleach note that fails to be moral. Hart stands in the doorway and lets the quiet work on him. He remembers where the bed had been. He notes the scar of 2 screws in the wall where a cheap painting once pretended to be landscape. On the floor, a metal circle where the leg of a table bit down. These are not clues, not yet. They are the old coordinates, the ones his body knows. He breathes through his mouth. There is nothing left in the room, which means there is everything left. When he leaves, he does not look back. He carries with him sound, a young man asking for time, promising completion. He carries with him a noun, locker. He carries with him a date range that fits into his chest pocket. He does not carry hope. Hope is for press conferences. He carries patience, which is harder and weighs less. At his desk, he writes out a list in the cold handwriting his wife used to call surgery script. Locker contents, who had keys, who knew about depot arrangement, who used the motel's service. He writes, "Why leave message on room phone?" He writes. "He knows who is he." He writes. "Rest of what?" The questions are a scaffold you climb because there is nothing else tall enough. The case reopens with an entry in the system, with emails that will be archived and unread, with a man in a quiet suit visiting a storage facility and touching paper that smells like fall. The word Vega moves from a dormant column to one with a new date. The air around room 17 thickens by a fraction. Somewhere, a locker door shuts in his head with a remembered clang. 3. Investigator examines past reports to identify overlooked details. Hart asks for the Vega files to be brought up from deep storage, all of them, not just the evidence binders. He wants the narratives, the reports that try to make time behave, the statements where truth slips and catches, the memos that look like fences hastily erected. 3 bankers' boxes arrive on a cart. The cart's wheels whine like small animals. He thanks the clerk quietly and signs the log as though he's checking out a book he never finished. He has a ritual for this kind of work. First, lay everything out. Paper likes to see its relatives. He opens the lids, removes folders that have grown heavy with the humidity of neglect, spreads them across a long table he commandeered from an abandoned conference room. He stacks the crime scene photos face down. He places the autopsy report on the far right, away from the coffee. He keeps a yellow legal pad near his left hand and writes the date at the top, NOV 12, 2025. He writes the victim's name again. Writing it is a way to keep it from becoming a case number. He reads. The first responding officer's report is steady, descriptive, thin. 21:18 hours, room 17. Victim found in tub, no water running, body cool to touch. The officer notes the smell, cleaner, floral, and the temperature, warm. Hart draws a box around warm. Heat can be destructive. It is a solvent for evidence. He writes in the margin, who turned up heater. Why? He follows the report to its end, where the officer apologizes in the grammar of procedure. Secured scene. Awaited detective. The crime scene inventory is better if more tired. Ziploc bags, paper sacks, labels that must have been crisp once. Item 23 catches Hart's eye. Key tag metal, numerals 12B. It had been found in the desk drawer with the telephone directory, beneath a folded map of Lincoln County. The photograph shows a small oval of steel with the numbers stamped deep. He remembers the drawer. He remembers the sharp smell of pencil shavings from an unused Motel pencil. He underlines 12B and feels his own heart stutter with the satisfaction of a loop closing. Locker 12B, the tag was there the whole time, but the uses changed like weather. In 1989, it was an oddity. In 2025, it is a language he can now read. He flips to interviews. The manager then was a woman named Jean Warren, 56, who smoked menthols and kept them out of the scene. She said Marisol checked in alone, paid cash, drove herself. She looked like she was waiting for someone, Jean said, then backtracked. Or maybe she was just thinking, I don't know. Hart writes, Jean wants to be accurate, listen for where she is. Later, Jean mentioned something small, a second car that pulled in behind the Corolla around 6 p.m., stayed a minute, then left. I only saw taillights going. What kind of car? Not big, not small. Color? Dark. The kind of detail that sinks without ripples. He reads the statement from a Bonanza Lounge bartender, 2 pages densely typed, who says Marisol left a week earlier with a man who tipped in quarters and smiled with his lips pressed together. Name? He didn't like names. The bartender laughs and says, he called himself Eddie and then he called himself Lance. Hart circles quarters. Payphones eat quarters. He moves to the autopsy. The clinical language is steadying. Fingernail scrapings negative for foreign DNA, as if the world agreed to be polite. Ecchymosis patterned over the laryngeal area, fingermark partials that could belong to anyone. No sexual assault. Stomach contents, toast, coffee, something like cantaloupe. Time of death estimated between 18:30 and 20:00. He writes window and draws 2 vertical lines. The motel manager's note about a dark car at 6 p.m. now sits inside. The answering machine message, timestamped 1912, slots there too. Someone was orchestrating a small tragedy on a schedule that felt almost municipal. Photos are reluctant companions. He turns them over one by one, not skipping, not lingering. The bed made, then unmade. A nightstand with a brown ring where a glass once sweated. The bathtub, white as an argument, marred only where life tried to stay. He views the close-up of the metal key tag. He looks for scratches that might whisper a story. He sees a gouge, crescent-shaped, near the hole where a ring might pass. He writes, gouge. He writes, compare to bus depot keys, 1989 style. Details are a country where he feels fluent. They speak to him in a grammar of nicks and where. A supplemental report, dated 2 months later, says the bus depot locker area was checked and found empty. The lockers were opened for cleaning before the depot was demolished in 1994. No contents were documented. A note in the margin, different pen, different hand. No sign of 12B lock. Hart feels the particular vertigo of loss. Evidence is not a thing. It is the path to a thing. A missing lock is a road washed out. He looks at the caller list from that week, collected from motel records and the telephone company. 3 calls to room 17, 1 from the Bonanza Lounge payphone at 1742, 1 from the depot payphone at 1912, and an internal call from the front desk at 2003 that went unanswered. He writes the numbers down in a column. He draws lines between them. The geometry is patient. The lounge to the depot to silence. He opens a thin folder labeled Neighborhood Canvas. 2 witnesses mention seeing a man near the vending machines around 7. Both use the same adjective, tidy. Not handsome, not big, not strange, tidy. One says he wore a windbreaker that made a nylon whisper. The other says he carried a small brown paper bag, the kind a sandwich would fit in. Hart writes, tidy, windbreaker, bag. He does not know why those 3 together give him the image of a person who practices not being seen. A forgotten memo, stapled to the back of an evidence receipt, is the small bone that finally catches. It is from the motel's night clerk, handwritten, dated October 15, 1989, 01:10 a.m. Detective Hart asked me to hold onto the extra ring from the desk until he could tag it. I put it in the cigar box under the switchboard. The cigar box never appears in the evidence ledger. Hart underlines extra ring twice. Desk keys, room keys, locker keys. He feels heat in his face that is not anger. It is the blood of a man who sees himself from 3 decades ago, moving too fast in a room where slowness would have saved something. He goes to the property room in the present and asks for old desk inventory. The clerk shrugs, then leads him to a forgotten bin of orphaned items collected during a renovation in 1992. Hart pulls up a plastic tote and opens it. The smell is sweet and stale. There is a bundle of rubber-banded keys. There is a cardboard sign that says no cash left overnight. There are 3 cigar boxes, 2 empty, 1 with a soft rattle. He lifts the lid. Inside, a ring of keys tarnished into anonymity and a thin metal oval stamped 12B with a crescent gouge near the hole. He holds the ring up. The edges are polished by use. One key is unusually heavy, shank scored with hash marks by someone's nervous calendar. Another key bears the embossed logo of the bus company in use that year. It is not a miracle. It is a correction. The thing lost was merely in the wrong drawer for 36 years. He places the keys on a white sheet and photographs them with his phone. The act is both secular and sacramental. He bags the ring himself, prints the label, signs the new line in the ledger. The clerk watches him carefully, as if something sacred might happen or not. "What now?" she asks soft. "Now we listen to what we already heard," Hart says. He returns to the table and adds a heading to a fresh page, overlooked. Under it he writes, "Misaligned tape, misfiled locker tag, missing cigar box, tidy man at vending machine, quarters, windbreaker, 1912 call." He draws a small rectangle for a locker and adds 2 keys crossing like bones. He thinks of Marisol, who knew rocks, who knew that time is not a line but a weight. He thinks of the phrase on the tape, "I have the rest." He writes, "Rest equals money, photos, documents." He does not write hope, he writes pattern. The smell of dust is stronger now that the boxes are open. Paper makes a sound when it settles, a small applause for patience. Outside, a branch scratches a window. Hart feels the mechanical rhythm of the building. Vents, lights, the faint elevator ding traveling through ductwork. He leans back and closes his eyes for 3 counted seconds. When he opens them, the room is the same, but the angle of the questions has shifted a degree toward solvable. He places the recovered key ring to his left, near the legal pad, within the space where his hand would wait to steady itself. He whispers the victim's name, not for comfort but for alignment. Marisol. The syllables sit in the air level. Then he begins again, and the work becomes its own kind of quiet. The reopening ripples outward the way stones disturb still water slowly, with widening rings of consequence. Hart sits in the small conference room they now use for cold cases. The walls are paneled with imitation oak. The table hums under the air conditioning vent. On the surface, an evidence board blooms like a fever, photographs, typed names, arrows traced in pencil because permanent ink feels presumptuous. He writes 4 names, then lets the silence fill the rest. 1. Eddie Lance Broder. A drifter in 1989, now a mechanic in Henderson, the man of quarters and alias. He had come through Ely twice that fall, hitching rides with truckers who remembered his chatter about a payout, something big coming. He'd been questioned once and his statement was thin. "I barely knew her, we talked." But the bartender's memory of the fake names, the quiet self-consciousness, remains an open door. Hart underlines Eddie/Lance and writes, "Motive money, fear." 2. Gene Warren. The motel manager. Old now, confined to a care home, but her notes in 1989 had gaps shaped like protection. She said she barely knew Marisol. Later interviews hinted she offered the girl a room discount. In the second transcript, Gene said, "She looked scared, but she smiled." People smile when they're scared, don't they? Hart writes. Motive, sympathy, concealment. He doubts her hands strangled anyone, but he knows people kill with silence too. 3. Marisol Vega. The father, a warehouse worker then, now deceased. His file holds letters he wrote to the sheriff's office for years. "Please find her. Please tell me she didn't suffer." There's no evidence of estrangement, no sign of anger, but grief has geometry and its lines can fold unexpectedly. Hart marks him out gently with a single diagonal line, not a suspect anymore, but a shadow that belongs in the picture. 4. Vincent Hale. The outlier, a small-town banker whose name appears once on a loan application found in Marisol's belongings. Denied, stamped in red. Vincent was known for small, quiet generosity, cash advances to struggling waitresses, but also for keeping collateral, sometimes personal. A clerk recalled seeing Marisol at his office the week she died. She left crying. Hart writes VH money/leverage and circles it twice. He begins the interviews again, decades late. Jean Warren is first. The care home smells of lemon polish and resignation. She's thin now, eyes pale, mind lucid only in flashes. Hart shows her a photo of the motel as it was, and she looks at it as though through fog. "You remember room 17?" he asks softly. "Everyone remembers the room they cleaned twice," she murmurs. "Did you ever see her with anyone that week?" Jean pauses. He wore a jacket that made noise like plastic. "A windbreaker." She nods. "Tidy man, he tipped exact change. I thought he was with her. She didn't say no." Hart asks, "Did you ever hear them argue?" Jean shakes her head. "Not argue. She said something about locker 12. He said she should have waited." Hart's pen hesitates. "Did she?" Jean's eyes drift toward the window. Nobody ever waits long enough. Next comes Eddie Broder. The man is 58, shoulders bowed but hands still restless. They meet in a diner off I-80, grease fogging the air. "I told the cops everything back then," Eddie says. Hart replies evenly, "Back then, we didn't have your voice on tape." Eddie's eyes narrow. "You're saying that was me?" "You tell me, you used payphones that week, you called her." He wipes his mouth with a paper napkin. "Yeah, I called. She said she had something, proof of what Hale was doing. I told her to hold on to it." "Proof of what?" "Loans, fake accounts. The guy was bleeding people dry. I was supposed to meet her that night, take her to Reno." "But you didn't show." His voice falters. "By the time I got there, the cops already were." "Why use two names?" Eddie stares at his coffee. "Because one of them was already in trouble." Hart leaves with no confession, only the sense of a man tangled between guilt and cowardice. Vincent Hale arrives last, invited, not subpoenaed. He's clean even now, 67, the kind of man who keeps receipts in order and shoes quiet. "I've answered these before," he says. "I know," Hart replies, "but the answers didn't fit the timing." "The timing of what?" "The call she got at 7:12 from a depot payphone. Someone said he knows about the locker. That someone might have been you." Hale's composure flickers. "I don't use payphones." "Not now, then." He folds his hands. "Detective, I had nothing to do with that girl's death. She came to me for money. I said no." "Did you know she had something stored downtown?" Hale's silence is the length of a heartbeat too long. "Rumors," he says finally, "but she liked to scare people into sympathy." Hart watches him as he stands. The man's tie trembles just slightly, a thin flag of restraint. When the room empties, Hart sits alone with the echoes of their denials. Every voice touches truth but doesn't stay. The alibis fit too neatly, the motives overlap like maps. He leans back and whispers to the air, the answer in the overlap. 5 clues emerge slowly, linking inconsistencies to emotional conflicts. Night after night, Hart returns to the board. The keys from locker 12B rest in a clear evidence bag beside him, small metal bones that remember too much. He dreams of the call again and again. He knows about the locker. The pronouns shift meaning with each replay. He lists contradictions. Hale said he never used payphones. Broder said he was close when he called, but call logs place that payphone 8 miles from the motel. Jean Warren said the man was tidy. Broder wasn't tidy in any sense. Hart opens a drawer of past handwriting samples, finds the locker ledger signature and studies the loops. They are smooth, deliberate. Broder's signature is jagged, impatient. Hale, however, shows the same arched B disguised as a P. The renter of locker 12B signed P. Lang. A lie built from phonetics, Lance Lang. someone mimicking Broder's alias. He exhales through his teeth. Someone wanted Eddie to be the ghost in the story, someone precise. He replays the answering machine again, this time filtering background noise through a digital program. Beneath the hiss, faintly, there's a mechanical rhythm, printing like a check machine. Banks had them then. He isolates the frequency. It matches the model used in Hale's branch during 1989, confirmed by archive logs.